Hello everybody, I'm Miss Jessica from EVPL Oakland, and we are back together for our Chapter Book Storytime Variety Pack. Last time when we were together, we spun our wheel and we landed on science fiction. So today we're going to be reading a science fiction novel, which means that there's some kind of almost like a fantasy-like quality to it or science-based quality to it. A lot of times it's something that can happen in the future. So you might see things like robots or spaceships in science fiction books. Now, this is one of my favorite authors. He has done a lot of books, and some you may have even read in the past. And this one kind of caught my eye when I was looking for a science fiction novel because the premise is very intriguing, and it already has a mystery to it that I'm dying to know what happens. So we are going to be reading Masterminds by Gordon Kormon, and let's see what the inside cover says. Eli Frieden lives in the most perfect town in the world, Serenity, New Mexico. In this idyllic place, every lawn is perfectly manicured and everyone has a pool and a tree house. That sounds amazing. Honesty and integrity are valued above all else. The 30 kids who live there never lie. They know it's a short leap from that to the awful problems of the other, less fortunate places. Eli has never left Serenity. Why would he ever want to? Then one day he bikes to the edge of the city limits and something so crazy and unexpected happens. It changes everything. Eli convinces his friends to help him investigate further, and soon it becomes clear that nothing is as it seems. In Serenity, the clues mount to reveal a shocking discovery connecting their ideal crime-free community to some of the greatest criminal masterminds ever known. The kids realize they can trust no one, least of all their parents. Okay, so we're going to get started right away with this. And don't forget, we always want reading to be enjoyable, so I do have my snuggly blanket here, and I do have something to drink nearby, so we can always be comfortable while we're reading. Okay, here we go. Chapter 1, Eli Frieden. It's a 1 in a million shot, and I nailed it. Just not the way we planned. I lie against the cool stone of the pool deck and peer into the filter opening. I can make out the tip of the boomerang, but I can't quite jam my hand in deep enough to get a grip. It's stuck! What are the odds, Randy groans? You could throw that thing 50,000 times and never get anywhere near the filter. But one little challenge and the bullseye. Randy's famous around Serenity for his challenges, which usually involve catching something uncatchable while riding a bicycle, jumping on a pogo stick, swinging on a rope, or rolling inside a truck tire. As his best friend, I'm usually the guinea pig for Randy's cockamamie ideas. Like today's challenge. Randy throws the boomerang out the window of the treehouse, and I'm supposed to leap off the diving board and snatch it out of midair and do a cannonball into the pool. Only I miss. The cannonball turns into more of a belly flop, and the boomerang disappears into the filter. Maybe Mr. Amani can get it out, I suggest. He's the local handyman, whose job includes pool maintenance and just about everything else from plumbing and electrical work to ridding your crawl space of scorpions and baby armadillos. And maybe he can't, which means my folks will have to call the pool guys. That's a much bigger deal than it sounds like. There's no pool company in Serenity, and the nearest town is 80 miles away. It can take weeks to get anybody to schedule a trip out here, and in the meantime, your pool turns to soup. Mr. and Mrs. Hardaway aren't going to be thrilled with this, although they're pretty used to it, having dealt with Randy for 13 years. It's definitely a drawback to living in a small town in the middle of nowhere. Every time something like this comes up, though, my dad just points to the newspaper clipping on our fridge. Serenity voted #1 in USA for standard of living. He leads me through the bullet points in the article. No crime, no unemployment, no poverty, and no homelessness. The amazing part isn't so much that we have none of those things, but the other towns do. And they're okay with it. It must be awful. Of course, there are only 185 people in Serenity, so it's not so hard to make sure all of them have someplace to live and work. We've got the Serenity Plastic Works, one of the largest producers of orange traffic cones in the United States. Our school has the highest test scores in New Mexico. We're right on the edge of the Carson National Forest, surrounded by canyons, foothills, and woods, and the sun shines practically every day. True, it gets pretty hot sometimes, but we don't bake like they do in those real desert towns. No wonder Dad's so proud. He's the mayor, which sounds like a big deal, but it really isn't. His salary as mayor is $1 per year, and he always claims he's overpaid. Our parents constantly remind us how lucky we are, and we always roll our eyes. But you know what? They're right. We are lucky. Just not when the pool filter is busted and the nearest repair is in Taos. Randy makes an executive decision. I'm not going to tell my folks about it. I'll just act 10 times as amazed as everybody else when they find the boomerang in there. I'm a little uncomfortable. That feels like lying. I know people do it all the time on TV and in books, but here we're honest no matter what, even when it's hard to be. Or when it could get you in trouble. That might sound a little too good to be true, but I think that's why people here are so happy. We could go to my pool, I suggest, anxious to change the subject. No boomerang, though. My dad is 20 times as strict as the Hardaway. He's the school principal as well as the mayor. That is a big job. There's only one school in town. Nah, I'm sick of swimming. We could hang out in the treehouse. Boring, he declares. Every kid in town has a treehouse, and none of them are any fun. And don't say video games either. It doesn't matter how good your home theater is when all your games are lame. Our games aren't so lame, I remind him. Randy and I have figured out a way to tweak the game software to unlock hidden features, like crashing cars and fighting with real weapons. Turns out I've got a knack for that kind of thing. I can do it with my iPad and computers too. It's strictly hush-hush because everybody in Serenity is anti-violence. I am too, but in a video game, I figure where's the harm in it? It's not like it's actually happening. Yawn. Randy gets this way sometimes where nothing satisfies him. Basically, he's a crab. Believe it or not, it's one of the main reasons I like him. You don't hear much complaining in Serenity. Randy always manages to find something though. It's almost as if he's daring the universe to do a better job, no matter how great things already are. I think my dad would be happier if I found a different best friend, but let's face it, in a town with only 30 kids, there's not much to choose from. And anyways, you don't find best friends, they just happen. So what are we gonna do? I ask him. Let's get out of here. Let's go somewhere. I brighten. They built the new high slide at the park. He's unimpressed. Big deal. You climb up so you can come down. Let's do something cool. Like what? Like, his eyes dance. Check out the most awesome old sports car you've ever seen. Sports car, I echo. When you live in a place this small, not only do you know every car, you could probably recite the license plate numbers by heart. When somebody gets a new vehicle, 3/4 of the town shows up to see it. There are plenty of fancy SUVs and sedans, but no sports cars. It's the weirdest thing. My dad and I were hiking a few miles out of town and we found an old abandoned ranch, busted up fences, and a house that was nothing but a pile of toothpicks. The only thing standing was this rusted Quonset hut. And when we went inside, the car was there. The tires were flat and the whole thing was buried in dust and spider webs, but it was beautiful. My dad said it was Italian and Alfa Romeo. It had Colorado license plates from 1961. Wow, I say. Yeah, he enthuses. Let's go see it. What, right now? Randy shrugs. What are you waiting for? Christmas? It's not too far. Grab your bike and let's go. I hesitate. I have to ask my dad. He looks pained. Bad idea. I know you're old man. Poor Dad. Felix Frieden is kind of a joke among the kids in town with his three-piece suits and his shine shoes and his no-nonsense attitude. They just see his principal side. Randy has a point, though. You think he'll say no? Why give him the chance? Randy insists. The car's only a few miles away. We'll be there and back before he even knows we're gone. Come on, Eli, live a little. It's just, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I have to be honest. I've never been out of town. Neither have I. Not since we visited my grandma when I was 6. No, I interrupt. I've never been anywhere out of town. Not even where your dad took you hiking. What about the time in science when our class went fossil hunting, he challenges. That was still inside the town limits. Mrs. Laska said so. He's amazed. You haven't ever passed that stupid sign, the one that says, now leaving Serenity, America's ideal community? I shake my head. I've never even seen it. Well, you're going to see it today, he decides. Grab your bike. That's another thing about Randy. He won't take no for an answer. He doesn't exactly bring out the best in me, but we have a great time together, and that counts for a lot. He does the things I daydream about, but don't have the guts to try. Until today. Only one road passes through Serenity, a 2-lane paved ribbon everybody calls Old Country 6. We pedal west along it, riding down the center over the faded, broken lines. There's little fear of meeting traffic in either direction. All decent highways cross New Mexico, well to the south. If you hit Serenity, chances are you're lost. As we bike on, I spike the gully that was the site of the fossil hunting trip. I am now farther from home than I've ever been in my life. Can it really be this easy? You can just jump on a bicycle and ride out of town? It seems like cheating somehow, breaking some overachieving law of the way things are supposed to be. Yep, here I am, just doing it. It's kind of exhilarating, at least. I've never been so aware of the beating of my heart and the blood pumping through my veins. I feel a little strange about not telling Dad. Not that I need his permission. I'm 13 years old. Besides, he never specifically said not to ride my bike out past the town limits. I'm not breaking any rules, but I know he'll be disappointed if he finds out about this. Face it, if I don't ask permission for this ride, how come I snuck my bike out of the garage? I try to push past the thought from my head as I paddle away. I glance over my shoulder at Serenity, the perfect rows of immaculate white homes, the swimming pools positioned on the lots like aquamarine postage stamps, the basketball hoops lined up like sentries, all lovingly set down amid the striking southwestern landscape. In this view, I find my answer to the nagging question of how a person could spend 13 years here without ever once setting foot outside the town proper. Why would I need to? When it comes to fun or comfort, we've got it all. We've got the stuff adults want to do, a great school and great jobs. We've got the 3 essential qualities of Serenity's citizens: honesty, harmony, and contentment. We've heard about the bigger towns and even worse, cities. They stink of garbage and everything's crumbling. And crime is so bad that nobody can trust anybody else. Please, people spend their time in fear, hunkered down behind locked doors and alarm systems. At the same time, it's almost startling how tiny the town is, even from the distance of barely a mile. If it wasn't for the factory, you wouldn't notice it unless you knew what to look for. I guess that's Serenity. Miracle our parents are always talking about, that so much quality of life can be held in such a small package. How much farther? I call to Randy. Probably another 20 minutes. After a bend in the road, a tall butte obscures the town altogether. It completes the feeling of being out there. Randy doesn't seem to notice at all. Look, he shouts at me, waving his arm to the right. It's the sign Randy mentioned, the one about leaving town. In contrast to the spotless and impeccable Serenity, it's surprisingly faded and weather-beaten. I squint at the bottom, where the warning, no gas next 78 miles, has been tacked on. I've done it. I've left town. I survey the rocky hills and scrub pines and brush. I don't know what to call this, but it's not Serenity anymore. After more than 13 years, I'm officially somewhere else. And how does it make me feel? To be honest, kind of scared. I've never done this before, never lost visual contact with my hometown. By the time I get to see this Alfa Romeo, I'll be so stressed out that I won't even be able to appreciate it. I'm overthinking this whole business to the point where it's making me sick to my stomach. Well, I'm not turning back. I made it this far, and Randy will never let me hear the end of it if I don't follow through. But I really am sick and getting sicker. The nausea grows stronger, rising up in the back of my throat. There's no way it's just from being nervous. This is something physical. What did I have for lunch today? I can't remember, but whatever it is, it's coming up and soon. My stomach twists and paralyzing cramps and my head hurts too. What's with you, Eli? Randy calls back in annoyance. Running out of gas already? His expression changes when he sees me. Hey, are you okay? I've slowed down, although I hardly notice it. Only pure stubbornness keeps my legs pumping. I'm in agony, blinded by the kind of headache that lodges behind the eyes like a glowing coal, pulsating and doubling in intensity. The pain is unimaginable. It's not just a terrible thing, it's the only thing. I'm not even aware of toppling off the bike until my chain strikes the road. Fire erupts in my forearms where they scrape through the pavement. I see Randy kneeling over me, feeling him shaking me. I'm powerless to respond. I can only focus on one thought. I'm dying. What happens next is so shocking and so bizarre that I'm sure I imagined it. Delirious with pain, a loud rhythmic roar swells around Randy and me, and strong winds whip down on us. A dark shadow moves directly overhead, growing larger and larger as it descends. An enormous military-style helicopter settles on the road, its rotor buffering us with air. The hatch opens and out jump 6 men in identical indigo uniforms and white-colored berets. "Purple people eaters," Randy breathes. Through a fog, I can barely make out the distinctive tunics of the Surety, the security force of the Serenity Plastic Works that doubles as the town police. It takes all the strength I have left to spread my arms to the rescuers. "Help me," I whisper, wondering if they can even hear me over the thunder of the chopper. "Eli?" I can't seem to pinpoint the source of the voice. Through blurry vision, I can just make out the outline of a face peering down from above. "Eli, wake up." "Dad?" I've never been so relieved to see him. My father's familiar features come into focus. Thin lips and pale eyes the color of a frozen lake. It's his principal stare, although it's hard to imagine him looking any different. If he was an astronaut or a fruit picker or a rock star. Most kids go a long way to avoid that expression, but to me it's familiar and even comforting in my earliest memory. I'm in one of the 2 beds in the Serenity's tiny doctor's office and health clinic. An IV tube tugs at my arm, and that means it's all true. It comes back like a delayed recollection of a terrible nightmare. The bikes, the collapse, the purple people eaters. I never thought I'd see you again, Dad. The lump in my throat swells to cantaloupe size. I never thought I'd see anybody. The stare softens and he leans over and hugs me. You gave us quite a scare. What happened? I feel better, but by no means back to normal. An impenetrable grogginess covers me like a curtain. The nausea and headaches are gone, but the memory of so much pain and fear haunt me. The idea that it's possible to feel so awful that maybe I'll feel that way again one day, it's changed me. On the other hand, I'm alive, which is kind of a surprise. What happened? I repeat. Dad breaks the hug. He tries, but he's not a touchy-feely guy. Dr. Bruder isn't quite sure. Dehydration, maybe? I was fine until suddenly I wasn't anymore. I was on my knees throwing up at nothing and holding onto my head to keep it from falling off. My voice cracks a little. I honestly believed I was going to die. But we can't rule out the possibility of an extreme allergic reaction to something growing out there, Dad goes on briskly. I stare at him, wanting to be baby just a few minutes longer. Briefly, I wonder if my mom would have been the warm and fuzzy parent. She died when I was little, so I'll never know. I don't even remember the smiling face in her portrait on our mantle. It's my job to replace the flowers every week. The picture is familiar, but the person in it is a stranger. Don't get me wrong. My father has always been there for me. I spit up on his tailored suits as a baby. When I toddled my first step, he was his sure hand steadying me. I even remember him in the pool supporting my stomach when I was learning to swim. No small thing for a guy who rarely loosens his tie. But a teddy bear he's not. Is Randy all right? Did the purple people eaters pick him up too? The pale eyes frost over in disapproval. We don't use that term. I bite my tongue. Maybe you don't, but that's what every kid in town calls them. What do you expect when you dress them up like a platoon in plum? You're very lucky the surety stumbled on you when they did, he continues. Stumbled? It isn't exactly how I'd describe it. Is that what you'd call a giant helicopter filled with purple stormtroopers descending from the sky and a blizzard of flying dust? When my father frowns, his lips retreat into a pencil-thin line above his chin. Stormtroopers. Where would you pick up a word like that? From school, I reply. I'm in 8th grade, Dad. We know about armies. We even know they have to fight wars sometimes. He sighs. I suppose we're citizens of the larger world, too. It's not just our own town. I wish that everybody could share the life we have here. Tell me about it. I agree. Hey, Dad, why do the surety, have their own helicopter? It belongs to the factory. We're fortunate to have a company like the Plastic Works that looks after us so well. A lot of communities our size don't enjoy our resources. Yeah, I persist, but why do they need it? We're completely safe. He looks surprised. Well, they just saved your bacon, didn't they? In a big city, that helicopter might have been needed for police surveillance. Here we have the luxury to use it to help people. It's just another thing that makes Serenity such a special place. Don't you agree? But for once, I'm not sure whether I agree or not, because the memory of the chopper triggers other images. Rough hands hauling me aboard the craft, a stifled "Hey!" from Randy hitting the deck beside me. The sound of the bikes being crammed into the cargo hold. A dizzying takeoff which finally brings up lunch. Serenity viewed from a high above, growing steadily larger as we come in for landing. Then pounding feet, a babble of anxious voices, purple people eaters, Dr. Bruder, my father, all talking at once. Here, hold the stretcher steady. Quickly, pull him out. The needle pierces my arms and I'm fading, but I can hear a response. Yes, Mr. Hammerstrom. Hammerstrom? At that point, the sedative takes effect and everything goes black. Dad kisses my forehead. That doesn't happen very often, proving how much this incident must have shaken him. Now get some rest, Eli. Dr. Bruder wants to observe you for a couple of days. I know I should be grateful to be alive, but the curiosity is boiling inside me and I can't help it. What's Hammerstrom? He's almost gone, but the question freezes him in the doorway. I beg your pardon? When they took me out of the helicopter, someone mentioned Hammerstrom? One of the surety goes by that name, Dad replies. I try not to smile. Wow, there's a purple people eater named Hammerstrom? I've got to tell Randy. Although everybody knows everybody in Serenity, that doesn't extend to the surety. They keep to themselves, which makes them kind of nameless and faceless. You see them around town, but the only time you ever get close is on Serenity Day for the annual Surety versus Plastics Works tug of war. That's also when they do their drill team parade, which looks like someone spilled grape juice on the Grenadier Guards in front of Buckingham Palace. Now put it out of your mind, my father continues. You're safe and it's all over. It's meant to be soothing, but it sounds a little like an order. I resist a wild impulse to snap a salute. All right, that's the end of chapter 1. And so if you would like to pick up, it's going to be on chapter 2. So we are going to end there for today. And already I have a lot of questions. Like, why did he get sick when he tried to leave the town? Why was the helicopter right there ready to pick him up immediately? Especially when we know that something weird is going on in this town. So I don't know about you, but I will probably continue reading this because I really want to know the answers to my questions. All right, if you would like to continue reading this, we have print copies available. We also have it as an ebook on Hoopla and also on Overdrive, which is also the Libby app. We also have it as an e-audiobook on both of those services, on both Hoopla and Libby. And we also have this as an audiobook that you can check out with the CDs that you can listen to. So we've got this in a lot of different formats if you would like to pick it up and continue with the story. All right, so we are going to be spinning our wheel to see what topic we're going to be reading next time, or what type of book we're going to be reading next time. So I'll be right back in just a moment. All right, so we're going to be spinning our wheel so that we can find out what we're going to be reading next time. So we just did science fiction, so if we happen to land on that one, I will probably re-spin. But we've got historical fiction, humor, fantasy, spooky, mystery, realistic fiction, adventure. Okay, here we go. Ooh, adventure. Those are always super fun stories. Okay, so the next time we're back together, we will be reading as an adventure story. So next week you will be with Miss Ellen, and she will have some of her favorites and some new books to preview for you. And then in 2 weeks, I will be back for our adventure story. All right, I'm Miss Jessica from EVPL Oak Lynn, and I'm so glad that you joined us today, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye.